Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first of our Lunch and Learn series for the RISE webinar series of 2022. Give me a moment here. Share my slideshow. All right, so webinar number 1, Canada's first ecosystem restoration camp, Camp Kitigay. We'll have Dr. Shirley Thompson and Angela Dumas presenting. So we'll get started. All right, so our agenda today is, here it is. First of all, welcome everybody. My name is Chantal Henderson. I am the Indigenous Programs Outreach Coordinator for the First Nations Waste Minimization Program here at the Green Action Center. This is the 3rd annual RISE webinar series. This year, we decided to do a lunch and learn. So every Thursday from 12 to 1 for the next 6 weeks from February 24th until March 3rd. Until March 31st, sorry. We'll be having these lunch and learns. So we'll be posting a link for the remaining webinars if you haven't had a chance to register for them. And basically, I've been in this role for the past 2+ years. And I am responsible for doing school presentations on First Nation schools and communities. And I do the RISE webinar series. We previously used to do the Teachers Conference. And yeah, I'd like to also introduce my co-host, Jordan. Are you there, Jordan?
Yep. Good afternoon, everybody.
I guess we should put on our videos. Wait, yeah, I can see it. There we go. All right, great. I think everyone can see us now. Great. Feel free to introduce yourself, Jordan.
All right. My name is Jordan Gabosh. I'm a community pathfinder with Green Action Center, the First Nations Waste Minimization Team. I've recently joined them in January and super excited to help out Chantal with this RISE and with this Lunch and Learn series. I've been doing the graphic design for it on the side, just helping her out. So I'm very excited to hear what we have to learn.
Awesome. And Jordan.
Right. So the Green Action Center is located on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples. It is also the homeland of the Meichan Nation. We acknowledge that our water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation, and the hydroelectricity we use comes from numerous First Nation territories around Manitoba.
Make rich. Our next slide is the video audio recording. Actually, I should back up. We should go back to review the agenda. So this is basically what we're going to do. 5 minutes video audio recording, questions, technical issues. We're going to introduce the speakers. They're going to do their presentation. They'll have a total of 40 minutes. And then there will be a 10-minute Q&A after the presentation is done. And then we'll do a wrap up with some closing remarks and let you know what remaining webinars are happening in the next 6 weeks. I just want to let participants know that your video and audio has been muted just to ensure there's no interruptions or background noise during the presentation. It'll be disabled until the Q&A portion near the end of the webinar. And This webinar is being recorded and will be available online via our YouTube channel within the next 2 days. So if there's anyone you know that was interested in attending and the timing didn't work out, just send them to our YouTube channel at the Green Action Center. And you'll find it under playlists, and it'll be under 2022 Rise. So yeah, on with the show. Go ahead, Jordan.
All right, so if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. First, you have to go to your chat function and switch it from to, and then you gotta click on everyone, and that way everybody will be able to see your questions, and we can address them later on during the Q&A. So if you're trying to chat and if no one's responding, you have to switch it to everyone.
And if you happen to have any technical issues, basically send them in the comments, message Jordan. He'll be keeping an eye on the chat function while hosting and the presenters are presenting. And yeah, otherwise, I will go into quickly introducing our first presenter. So Dr. Shirley Thompson is the principal investigator with the Minnow-Bimadzuin Partnership and associate professor with the Indigenous Focus Group at the Faculty of Environment, Earth, and Resources at the University of Manitoba. This Minnow-Bimadzuin Partnership works to build capacity, food security, and houses in northern Manitoba through partnerships for community-led post-secondary education with First Nations and the International Movement for Ecosystem Restoration Camps, ERCs. Shirley is the interim, Dr. Thompson is the interim ecosystem restoration camp manager for Kitigay Camp at Beauconia, Manitoba. Go ahead, Jordan.
Angela Dumas is an elder and knowledge keeper of Brokenhead Ojibway Nation. She's a single grandmother of 7 grandchildren and first-year student of University of Manitoba. She's studying agricultural crop planting on a small scale for preserving over the winter. She's a researcher and gatherer of natural medicinal wild plants and composter, to rejuvenate soil health economically. She is passionate about environmental sustainability because everything we eat, drink, wear, use in our lives comes from the earth elements. Angela has been a passionate gardener since she was a child, taking care of the earth and taking care of us. All of Earth's minerals and nutrients, plants, soils are life-sustaining, continuing the circle of life, minimizing waste and producing healthy soil to use.
So welcome. And I'll hand it off to Angela, Dr. Thompson, and Angela will come in as the presentation goes on. Go ahead, Dr. Thompson. Floor is all yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful introductions. I really appreciate it, Chantal and Jordan. And I'll start my slide presentation. Angela and I will be presenting together. And let's see if you can see that. I've got it optimized for sound. And here we go. So we're presenting on a first in Manitoba, first in Canada, Camp Kitigay Ecological Restoration Camp. So there's now hundreds around the world, but we're the first and we're in Manitoba. So that's really exciting. And the camp, or the location where people will radiate out from and learn, is in Beauconia, which is not so far from Winnipeg. I'll give my land acknowledgement, which is very similar to the one you heard from Green Action Center, which is great. This is the homeland of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Inuit, Dene, and the Métis people. The hydroelectricity powering my computer is generated in northern Manitoba, home to the Innu. The water comes from Shoal Lake, adjacent to Shoal Lake 41st Nation, and they have struggled with safe drinking water access and Food Freedom Road, which is a grave environmental injustice. I acknowledge the damage of the past and present and commit to work in meaningful partnership with Native people. So let me show you where Camp Kitigay is. So you can all come and to the education programming and learning. This is what it's building a movement in agroforestry, in ecosystem restoration, and teaching permacultural skills by applying, by actively working with ecosystems. And we'll be working with international experts and local knowledge holders like Angela. The idea of the camp is to regenerate, feed the body and soul, and assist to build agro-ecological systems.
Before you move on, Dr. Thompson, the black box of your meeting controls is showing.
Okay.
I think you can do Control-Shift-H. and then I'll
Control
delete
Shift
it.
H. Okay. Control Shift 8
H.
or H.
H.
Okay. Control Shift H. How about I just put this up a bit? I tried, but it didn't do anything. Huh. Okay. Does that work a little bit better? If it's at the side there?
Sure.
Because it's, I'll try it one more time. Control Shift H. Nope, nothing.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Go on.
So for those who don't know, this is the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Concerns about climate change, concerns about water, so many issues. And the idea is more than sustainable, right? We have to go past sustaining what's here and regenerate and recover what's been lost. So we're moving from the reducing societal impacts, which is the environmental impact assessment, to improving, repairing, initiating, and fully recovering. And the concept is that Native people, Indigenous people have actually increased biodiversity so that humans can do very positive, be a positive force, not only a negative force. So it's a different way of thinking about the role of humans as stewards. So this is part of a movement. I'm going to play a brief video and you'll find out more about it. And this is a video that was created at the beginning, and there's been so many more joining since then. So.
Namaste.
Bonjour.
Shalom.
Hi.
Bonjour.
Hi.
Jambo.
Hi.
We are Ecosystem Restoration Camps. We're a global group that is fighting poverty, climate change, species extinction, and desertification through restoring degraded landscapes all around the world.
I am the camp coordinator at Camp Kheti, India. At Camp Mama Adama.
Camp Vieux Soleil in Aja, France.
Camp Mombasa Mangrove Forest.
Habiba Camp, it's based in Egypt.
In Somalia.
In Brazil.
Over the past decades, we have learned that ecosystem restoration is a powerful tool to mitigate these crises. Restoring degraded ecosystems returns life and restores livelihoods. Restoring degraded ecosystems and introducing regenerative practices requires an expert-designed plan, local leadership, and people to join in to do the work. Ecosystem restoration camps are exactly these places where experts, leaders, and people get together to plan and then execute that plan. In 2016, we established the first ecosystem restoration camp in Spain. We now support 37 camps in 26 countries across 6 continents. Our goal is to have 1 million people come together by 2030 to reverse ecological destruction and restore biodiversity in 100 camps around the world. The ecosystem restoration camps are collaborative living labs where local people and international volunteers, or campers, not only take on restoration, but also innovate, learn from their practices and refine them and share their learnings with the world. These local living labs collectively form a large, global living lab that is contributing to a global knowledge base on how to create abundant and thriving regenerative practices. The camps are developing the proof of concept in local landscapes that will inspire and attract all who live there to join the worldwide effort to restore ecosystems and introduce regenerative practices that will make it possible for humanity to survive on this planet. The camps are also places where everyday people can go to learn about restoration and make a positive impact by physically taking part in bringing land back to life. Camps provide a meaningful, empowering experience that changes the way participants see their relationship with Earth. It is this changed attitude of people, as they start to see themselves as part of nature and not separate from it, that will enable a personal transformation and build the strong foundation for our sustainable success. This year, the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration starts. It shows how governments, civil society, and companies around the world are going to dedicate their resources to restoring degraded ecosystems and introducing the regenerative practices that will keep our planet alive and humanity thriving. Ecosystem restoration camps are partners to this process around the world. We provide the physical places where all stakeholders can come together, take ownership of the problems they face, and get to work. Our camp movement is growing to hundreds in the next few years, supported by an impressive group of experts and advisors and integrated into a global IT platform that matches knowledge, expertise, and labor to the places where they are needed. We are open to all. Join us and help us create a world you want to live in.
So that tells the story of where we're starting. We've just been declared a not-for-profit, so we're trying to work with everyone. It's very much in Canada, in the prairies, which is a very degraded system. And it also is inviting people to come in and camp and learn. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story that will feed into more information about what we've done here in Canada, or in Manitoba, and the teaching we have, or Angela has, on soils and bringing them to life with compost. So I'm going to start the story with a picture from Meichan Farms. Meichan Farms is in Island Lake First Nation. That's a remote fly-in community, Island Lake, which is in Garden Hill First Nation. I'm sorry about that. So Meichan Farms, and here you can see different soils. We planted the first year in Garden Hill, and really nothing grew except for these test plots, and really only in the fish soil. So this was a traditional practice, and it really shows the importance of learning from traditions. It was always done on potato islands where fish were buried, and it just brought the soil to life, and it gives exactly what is missing in the land is in the water. So bring it together and you create the perfect mix. And you can see we tried other things just to show what works best. Peat, peat has no nutrients, or doesn't release nutrients quickly, so that wasn't a good offering. Hugelkultur does release slowly, so the first year, second year, that's not a great one, but in the future it will be. I'm just going to show a minute of Meichan Farm, just to introduce you to what's possible in a short time. This film was taken within 1 month of starting the farm. So you can see it's pretty bare, but it's growing, and the ideas of food and the interest is growing. Oops, and that did not play. sorry. Anyways, this is a greenhouse that also houses chickens and provided, a base for the farm. So there were, I think, 1,000 broiler chickens, and that worked really well the first year, but we had to build the soil. So where we planted fish, we also planted and reaped great crops. Where we didn't plant fish, we didn't end up doing that. And part of permaculture is learning and observing the land and working with the land and realizing things take a little time to grow, and that biodiversity, bringing as much diversity onto the land, helps the soil, helps everything else grow. So in this case, we had a landscape designers working with the permaculture people at Garden Hill, and developed a program over 20 years to have a healthy farm, but a food market, annuals, but lots of perennials, berries, trees, right? The sweet Meichan grove, and how that was working with the soil, with animals to fertilize, bringing crops that fix nitrogen to feed the fruit trees. So working with nature, and the whole idea of ecosystem restoration is learning from nature, working with nature, and creating greater biodiversity and a better social ecological systems. So this design came out of a permaculture design course that was a partnership between Island Lake and University of Manitoba. And 6 people came from Garden Hill, and one of the teachers was from Garden Hill, and everyone got an international design certificate in permaculture design, as well as many people got course credit. So permaculture is going to be the basis of kind of the focus on produce no waste, and this idea of compost, and how it's an ethical concept that we care for the earth, care for people, and we share. And that is the ecosystem restoration is working around agroforestry, ecological systems, and this idea of permaculture, realizing permaculture, the basis of permaculture is Indigenous cultures, where they worked with the earth to make it regenerative. So we similarly recently had a program at Brokenhead Ojibway Nation, and Angela Dumas is part of it, and she's a professional gardener. It was asking people to join us, and similarly ecosystem restoration camps asked people to join and learn from hands-on activities to grow food. So this, Angela, do you want to talk a little bit about this Kitigay University of Manitoba program and how we worked with Bonn in 2021, and there is education programs still continuing. Here's some pictures of it, where we're at the Bonn Wetland. If you've never been there, you should. There's so much education. It's very close to Beauconia Research Station, and a really lovely trail. And here we are planting at the Bonn Bison Ranch. We're planting garlic. And it's important to consider in plantings, the less you till soil, the more carbon, the more nutrients are in the soil, the more life is in the soil. But when you start a garden from, we called it a kingdom of thistles, you have to do an initial till. So Angela, can I turn this over to you now?
Sure, I can just jump in while you're doing this.
Great, I'll move it forward. You just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, so we had quite a heck of a time to get the thistles out of the ground before planting. last year in September, October. We started clearing the land in Brokenhead, where the old bison ranch used to be. Anyway, we learned a lot. We learned how to do controlled burns to get rid of the thistles. So we got rid of the thistles and we rototilled areas, a couple areas to start planting in. We planted garlic already. And we're getting into composting. We definitely have so many plans for the garden. Start your video.
Oh, should I start that?
Sure.
So this is to show that there's so much life in soil. Soil is so alive. And the more fungi, the more organic matter, the more mixed. You want biodiversity in the soil. And the beauty of this is that the largest mammal, so we think of fungi, we think of under our as soil as maybe dirt, but soil is very much alive. And strange but true, the largest organism on Earth is a fungus. So this is acres and acres. It's bigger than the whale. So everything you thought about the biggest animal in the world is blown to pieces by this idea that fungi communicates. It it fosters each other. It's like it takes care of each other. It works like a living organism. It is one. And it's on every step you take, there's all these animals in living soil, and they feed the birds, but they also feed us. So we're in this picture as well. And so there's organic matter, and there should be 5% organic matter, and that's what's often missing. And that's where Angela's discussion on compost is really going to kick in, because we really want to increase the organic matter in the soil, the carbon in the soil. And for those of you who don't know, there's more carbon in the soil than is grown in the trees and the plants. It's actually the second largest bank of carbon is in the soil, and the first is in the ocean. So that's something we have to think about. If we want our climate to be in balance, we have to consider the soils and composting. And Angela, do you want to speak to this one?
You're doing good, Shirley.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking then, and you come in anytime, because
Yes.
Angela is actually the expert gardener. I'm an expert PowerPoint person. But I do compost religiously. I have compost because it does, it creates a beautiful soil, and it smells like soil. After you finish organic composting, what you should be doing is smelling it, and you get the richest soil smell. And considering that we need this to feed our gardens, to feed the plants, this is the best fertilizer for plants, because it has the microbes in, the bacteria that make it bioavailable. And you've heard that term in terms of your food, that food has to be available for you to pick it up, but the same is true for nutrients. And so we can have all the nitrogen in the world, but if it's not in the right form, it's not edible for plants. And I believe, Angela, you have this type of bin, right? The 3-bin system. And why do you have that?
Well, it goes through a process to decompose. It takes sometimes a long time for the organic matter to decompose properly. Yeah, it's also living soil, so it can't be overheated. It has to be turned in different piles along the way. But that's really good stuff. You can grow more food in all the composted soil you have from your kitchen scraps, usually from the garden, from the forest floor. That's fantastic. And it's free. It's all free. Yeah.
So perfect. And this, what you mentioned is from the forest floor. And there is, you know, a biodynamic thinking around this, that if you add a tablespoon from a forest floor, it has all the proper protozoa and fungi that will feed your compost and make it everything work. So, you know, you have to take very humbly from any wild place. You can't take too much. You have to ask. But that is like, you know, it's the magic ingredient that brings in all the fungi, the bacteria, the protozoa that a compost needs. And
yes, we have a lot of natural medicines, like you can see here. This is cedar tea. It's so easy to use and to make. It's so tasty too. You don't even have to add sugar or or honey. But on top there is Weekay. That's one of the natural plants that we use all the time. I usually mix mine with a cup of green tea and about a 1/4 cup of Weekay, grind it in, and it helps with coughs, sore throats, oh my goodness, sore stomachs. It helps with everything. And it's all natural and it's free. So right now I'm doing some germinating. I'm germinating some herbs, coriander, chamomile, oh boy, rosemary. I've never tried before, but I tried, but I just couldn't do it. Yeah, it's really exciting times right now. That was last year's crop. We had lots of carrots. We had lots of tomatoes, baby tomatoes and big tomatoes, corn, baby corn. We had a lot of baby corn and squash. We did some oriental noodle beans for the first time. That turned out pretty good. But yeah, most of it, we used like half of it, and we are composting the other half. Yeah, but we're also saving seeds from the corn and from the tomatoes, the indeterminate tomatoes, the ones that will grow like a vine and give you food all summer. Yeah. And here's the pickles. The whole class of 12, at the beginning of the year, September, our first class was to jar pickles. So we did about 50 jars of pickles and shared it amongst ourselves and gave some away for gifts. Yeah, it turned out really good. I loved it. But composting.
And they're delicious.
Yes. Yes. Composting. Oh, here we go. To join in.
Yes. Okay. So this is showing that compost can really heat up, and you can see even in the coldest days, even maybe today, your compost bin, if it's large enough, will in the center still be smoking. And so it generates a lot of heat and actively composts, you know, more in the spring, summer, fall, but if it's big enough in the winter. And so it will actually, you know, transform the compost and stabilize and change it into soil. So the browns and the greens are being baked, and as a result, you get this beautiful soil, really.
Mhm. Decomposing naturally.
Yeah, so you need the decomposers, you need water, and you need air. So these are not a lot of ingredients. It's as easy as coffee in the morning, right? Except you don't have the decomposers, you have the coffee. So just exchange that. And you can see that there's all sorts of life that it creates, and that we want, you know, we need the land to be alive. We don't want dead land. So this is maybe something you've heard a lot of, is that you should be putting in a bottom layer of brown. And it really does help if you have a, what's it called? A wood plat or something, some air to get in the bottom, right? And then green, and then brown, and then green, and then brown. So you can see they call it a lasagna layer, and that there should be water, and it to be as wet as a wrung out sponge. So you know that water promotes growth, right? Like you water your plants, you know, they can't dry out. Bugs need water too, and compost needs water. Anything you want to add to this one, Angela?
Yeah. All the brown material would be like the leaves from outside, grass clippings, wood chips. Oh boy, yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And for the green material would be your kitchen scraps, like apple cores, banana peels. Oh yes, all kinds of vegetables, all the vegetables and fruits.
And for me, I don't think you can do any composting wrong. I've done it every lazy way there is possible, and I always get compost at the end, right? So, you know, sometimes you just get a little bit more bugs, but really just separate your organic matter from your non-organic matter. They do not go together. You're never going to get zero waste if you mix those two. What you have to do is separate them, and then it helps to add air to turn the pile. It just makes it faster. Lots of people don't turn the pile and it still works. It helps to add water, aiming for 40 to 60%. And this is what Angela spoke to, right? Is, you know, leaves, wood, and paper is the carbon or the brown. And nitrogen, the nitrogen is the food waste, and it could be a manure as well. And you know, it says 5 parts of brown to 1 part of green, but really just separate them out as a first step. Do that, you know, even if it takes 5 years of just doing that, you're still going to get a beautiful compost. It's just it's less smelly, there's less problems the other way. But there's no bad way of doing composting. Don't you agree, Angela? It's better just to do it. You don't have to be finicky about it. If this is just too detailed and you don't want to get into chemistry, just separate out. That's the first step.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just do it. Just throw all your compost in one pile and go for it.
I have a door on my balcony. In the winter, I compost. I have a little bucket on my kitchen, and every day I dump it out. But oh my goodness, I probably have to put out my garbage probably once a winter. Like, I have so little garbage. Once you separate out, you know, your garbage never stinks. It never builds up. You're actually creating this soil feed, right? And food. So
Yeah.
you're creating a resource. It's no longer waste. It's just like it's no longer dirt, it's soil. It's no longer waste. It's a beautiful
The
fertilizer.
living matter.
A
Yeah.
beautiful living matter. That's right.
Mhm.
And so when it's done, you get this dark, frumbly, earthy smell that, you know, is just gonna, just put it around your plants. Your plants will love it. So if you only get a little bit, just baby your plants and put it around it. So the roots and plant, you know, even if it's inside, if you're inside and don't have a garden, just cluster it around your indoor plants or plants on your balcony, and it will give it the nutrients, and you'll just see it flowering. Something that never flowered will flower. And the time it takes, the short period is 3 weeks to 2 months. So that's if you turn it, I think, and it's hot. But a longer period, 2 months or more, it's not that long, is it? For free food for plants and for, you know, free food for you, really. So these are a variety of bins. Have you used most of these, Angela?
I've only used the like the cement part and the other one beside it, the wooden ones.
Yeah, the other ones,
Get the tumbler.
the tumblers bring in more oxygen and mix it up, but you know, that might be too much work, right? I've never used a tumbler either. But there's so many different, you can buy them, you can make them, you don't even need anything. You can just pile it high. You can, another way is to create a row beside your garden that's 8 inches deep and just put it at the bottom so that, you know, in 2 years or a year, it becomes, you know, such nutrient dense soil, and you would plant in it then. So it's just an extra row beside your garden that you cover up so it doesn't smell, and you don't need anything, just no excuse. And these are kind of the bins you would put on your, at least the worm food and the black one on your kitchen counter. So, you know, you have your coffee grinds and you throw it in, you have your apple peel and you throw it in. And something I'm really realizing is there's so much more out of food you can eat. Like you can eat carrot tops. What you can do with so much of the peels, like I'm starting to make juices from pineapple peel, from apple, you know, anything I don't use, you can boil it up and make juice from it. So something to consider, or soup base. And do you ever get any smells, Angela, from your compost?
I do sometimes, yeah. Yeah, but I just mix it up and add some more soil from the garden. Yeah.
That's a great trick, because then you cover up the smell. Really, it's just this, you know, anything that blocks it. So whether it's wood chips or soil, and so soil will be adding microbes too, right? Like it will bring that back in and protozoa.
Yeah,
that's a great trick.
Gives it a balance.
And fungi, we mentioned fungi before. It's really good when it's right next to the root. So just think about that, is, you know, is how they can protect the roots. They do so much for the plant, and it adds carbon to the soil. And so a lot of these, a nice living soil, the carbon, all of that is at risk if you till too much. Like definitely there's some tillage, especially when you're just starting a garden, like if the land has never been tilled up again. But afterwards, you do want to cover it up, protect, you know, have a layer so that the carbon isn't released to the air. And so it's kind of like creating a little home for all your microbial friends, right? Like all the protozoa, all the fungi. You know, provide a home just like you want a home, they need a home too. And these are some books you found. Sorry, Angela. Compost Stew, an A to Z recipe for the earth. Did your kids like that?
Yeah, they loved it. It's a good read.
So we can do it at the home level and the community scale composting systems. So considering that, you know, many municipalities collect compost. So, you know, especially for Toronto, for example, where there's big apartment buildings, because this shouldn't be going to the landfill. When it goes to the landfill, it creates methane that adds to the problem. So we want to make sure that the compost doesn't get to the landfill, that all those nutrients aren't lost, and it doesn't create a problem when it really is about feeding us, right? And we know from all the concerns about the foods going up that we really do have to create a transformative society that feeds ourselves. And we've always fed ourselves. You know, we have to revisit that away from the global economy. It's only, the global economy has just been for a short time. Let's get back to, you know, what we know, but using all the increased information. And like with the compost, you can make compost teas. I make compost teas for my plants inside. You can do it with anything. Is you just put you know, a banana peel in water with a lid, and you'll find that things that didn't flower for a long time will flower. As spraying with compost tea protects the plants. There's so much good for compost. And this is kind of speaking to that, is this climate farming, turning your garden, and I'm sorry you're seeing this, is into a carbon guzzling food growing oasis. So instead of a carbon guzzling car, we're having a carbon guzzling garden that grows food out of that carbon, and realizing that 3 times more carbon is in the soil than in the atmosphere, which is kind of interesting. So, you know, there's a lot of root systems, but all the organic carbon that over time, especially in the prairies, right? Those prairie plants, the trees bring down and store the carbon. And that's where we want to keep the carbon to create balance. And other things we can do to have good soil is we said that tillage is bad. So what do we do alternatively is we create a mulch, and the mulch will keep down the weeds. And these are ones that put nitrogen, fixed nitrogen. So they have nitrogen nodules. And there's information, if you go to this website, it has it for veg, but it has it for every plant. When you should sow indoors, when you should sow outdoors, when you can harvest. It's really great. And you know, look, some things you do early because they're just really creating a base for your other plants to keep down the weeds, right? And to make sure there's nutrients in the soil by the time your tomato needs it growing out of the ground. This shows, there's two pictures here, is showing the succession of plants and how much more nutrients, how much more bacteria and fungi are in these forest systems, right? So look at this monoculture that's in the first couple of boxes, right? Nothing, like fungi, bacteria, right? And carbon the same, right? There's no nutrients there, and that will get in your food and limit your nutrients, right? Compared to the forest system. So from this diagram, we know that our agriculture systems should be mimicking the forest system. If we want life on this earth, that's what we should be focusing on, is agroforestry systems, agro-ecological systems. And permaculture tries to bring that in, but any of those terms are great. Biodynamic farming is another one. All these have great answers for people who are really thinking, how can I bring this land back to life? It's compacted soil, it's nutrient poor soil. wow, there's just such a difference you can make. And composting is a great start to do that. And realizing the more biodiversity, the more plants you plant, the more animals you have, and the more bugs and birds you attract and pollinators, the more it's going to become alive. And Ingham has this soil food web school, and they're just so crazy positive about soil, and soil is a basis of all life, right? And how the same organisms that are in the soil are in your gut. So if you're eating, if you're eating from soil rich, you're going to have a much healthier digestive system. Anything you want to add there, Angela? Because I know this is traditional ecological knowledge, right? That planting into planting into forest systems is something that's always occurred.
Mm-hmm. Letting the natural fruits come back to life is one of the things that we're planning on doing. And yeah, we had a lot of strawberries at one time, natural strawberries, but there's hardly any. But now, we're going to regenerate that by planting more in certain areas, and making our community into a food forest is what we're planning on doing. And that means putting fruit trees in the middle of our little community or outside the community, just around the area, around the school, along the bush lines. And yeah.
That's lovely. And, I think of it as as a lazy gardeners, like you plant it once, maybe the first few years, just you nurture it, you make sure it grows, but then it feeds you for the next, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So
yes,
it's putting the work in up front and in the design, but then realizing that you don't have to plant it every year. You just get this gifts from nature, and you're working with nature then.
Yes, absolutely. And we can even plant grapes that will come back year after year and get bigger. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're looking at what grows and regenerates. So anything like plum trees regenerate. So when it drops a seed, regenerates, that's your garden saying what it wants to plant and what it can, is a regenerative system. So looking at nature and seeing what it grows, and it always grew there. And sometimes that's, looking at trying to find a native land that hasn't been so disturbed to see what is natural. We've lost track of that because so many of our soils, so much of our land is disturbed. It's compacted. There's been things, there's been big vehicles driving over it, and been disturbed by the fact that bison don't roam the prairies anymore. So the natural systems have been disturbed. So looking for those systems that do.
A lot of our land has been devastated by forest fires during the summer hot months. Oh boy, the last few years has been terrible out here. And that's how we lost a lot of our natural medicines. But they'll come back. I know they'll come back. Yeah, it'll balance everything out again.
So this idea that, what you're speaking of is restorative, regenerative, right? And Indigenous knowledge is, we're still hearing, U of M, every place is still in the oil and economy, and it's doing research in that area and it's supporting it, right? Our government is still there, which is degenerating. Then there's the green that is kind of greenwashing. It's going down the loss, environmental impact that doesn't have any control over stopping these huge mines that are very problematic, or at least, looking at different ways to do it. Sustainable, which is less energy, less initial cost, less operating. we're asking, through this ecosystem restoration camp to move to the restorative, to recover the loss, right? To move to regenerative, to create an abundance for nature so there's enough for all, right? And this idea of a camp where anybody can come, like the bar, all you have to do is commit to do some work every day. But in that working is learning with others, right? And so, looking at this worldview shift that is necessary and based very much on Indigenous knowledge. And that is the seed of permaculture. Like permaculture got all its knowledge from Indigenous knowledge. And the Indigenous worldview is there is no waste, right? Angela, like nothing was wasted.
Waste. Exactly. Even when you're hunting, they use every piece of the animal. Yeah.
So I think we probably have to finish up. I know it's, so I'll drop the stream, and if there's any questions we can answer.
Yeah, we have a minute for questions. We had one from Stacy a while back. She said, where can I purchase the books? So if you had any ideas for her.
Yes, well, Google them. There's many. Island Press is the most fabulous book vendor for, it's a Canadian company for anything permaculture, anything composting. It's really, really great.
Yeah, Amazon, I would think.
And when can I come to the camp? Come. So we'll be having different events. Angela's on the board. I'm on the board. There's other people. Kim Lee from Sagin First Nation, Karoo, who's from Beauconia, who's Métis, Nome. So there's many creative people, and we're going to have some events. So there's actually a form. If you go to ecosystem restoration camps and go to Camp Kitigay, we're on there with hundreds of others around the world, but first in Canada, and put in your name and when you want, what you're hoping to get out of the experience. And we're just thinking of all these wonderful events to have this summer where we can have some hands-on learning. We've already decided we want to teach, and Angela's great at this, teach grafting, so that we can, really use our crabapple base that's really, really strong, but create the kind of apples that are delicious and abundant, and so the best of both worlds. These rooted apples that crab apples, but then the beautiful apples coming from them, and realizing that in quick succession you can get. It's not like planting a tree and waiting 10 years. With grafting, it speeds up the process.
Faster, yes. Oh.
What was the website you mentioned?
So if you, thank you, it's Ecosystem Restoration Camp. So Google that, and it's a worldwide movement, and we're part of it here in Manitoba, Canada. We're the first, but we don't want to be the last. We think this is a great idea. Has to grow, and we're just, Angela and I are just saying, let's get other communities on board and make this much more popular. We all have to learn how to be sustainable. Let's do it in a fun environment, where we share, we eat together, we camp out, we talk to each other, we bring our kids with us, etc.
Yes, it's most definitely a family affair. A community affair.
And someone said they'll bike there to enjoy the summer. Well, it's right on the Trans-Canada Trail. So go through Brokenhead and then come up, right on the Trans-Canada Trail. You can bike there. You never have to go on the highway.
Beautiful beaches. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's a beautiful area. Okay.
All right.
Any other questions?
Someone was asking if they could camp there for the summer.
That is the idea. Yes, you apply, and we want you. We certainly want to bring this together and make this happen. And And if people are living there, they're going to make it happen. The one thing I know, having worked on Meichan Farm, and I live there, up north in Garden Hill, is you have to be there if you have animals and you want things to happen on a regular basis. So that speeds things, like, you know, it just makes you notice everything and observe everything and be part of nature, which is the first step to ecosystem restoration, is observing and interacting.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm just going to wrap it up. We don't have any more questions. So I want to thank you both for attending and agreeing to present. And it was very informative. It was a lot of information, visuals, videos, you had it all. And we look forward to hearing more about it in the future. And maybe it's going to be transplanted somewhere else, another country, maybe other parts of Manitoba, who knows? Cross your fingers. So basically, we just want to say our closing remarks. If this webinar has been recorded, so it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can go here to our link, Green Action Center playlists. You'll find them there. If you want to reach out to the First Nations Waste Minimization team, myself, Jordan, there's Beth, there's Amy. Here's our email. You can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or if you like, you can even join our newsletter. Perhaps Jordan, you could, wait, maybe I could actually put that in the chat. And I'll also post the link to the rest of our upcoming webinar series, which is sorry, my computer's a little slow today. So our upcoming webinars, go ahead, Jordan.
Our second webinar is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. It's Community Gardens Project in Penamutang and Peguis, hosted by Alfred Pruden and Carl McCorster. Our third one is Thursday, March 10th, 2022. It's with, I can't even, sorry, that's Sue. Chantal, do you know how to say that?
Wipazoka?
Yeah,
Waka?
Wipazoka.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Thursday, March 17th. Garbage Pets Hands-on Mixed Media Workshop with Eddie Ayub from Art City. Number 5 is Thursday, March 24th. It's Climate Change, Indigenous Knowledge and Adaptation Within the Prairies, hosted by Brett Hassan and Dr. Ian Morrow. And number 6 is Thursday, March 31st, which is Traditional Food Preservation and Dehydration, hosted by Audrey Logan, founder of Dehydration Nations.
So that is it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email, social media, Instagram, join our newsletter, and that's it. So thank you, Angela and Dr. Shirley, and everyone who attended. And we hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye.